Tom and Tabo, yeah.
Now I see in the media that
Netflix kind of rules my heart when it comes to true crime documentaries. Be it the OG Ted Bundy tapes or the Tinder Swindler, it's always managed to capture the attention of everyone who has questionable bedtime watch lists and falls asleep to murder stories. I, for one, am guilty as charged, but Beauty and the Bester is so outrageous that it beggars belief. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Recently, on September 12th, the streaming platform dropped a 3-episode mini docu-series against considerable opposition from the legal team of the accused people, when presiding judge Sulit Potteril ruled against the petition, stating that the matter was already in the public domain. I'm talking about none other than the notorious investigation into one of South Africa's most infamous conmen, who earned the moniker of the Facebook rapist for targeting vulnerable women through social media. Thabo Bester, who single-handedly threatened the nation's safety, lured ambitious young women with the excuse of job opportunities and assaulted them. Bester pleaded guilty to 2 rapes and a murder and was being held in the Manguang Correctional Facility till his controversial escape with the alleged help from the famous celebrity doctor Nandifa Magudumana. The documentary highlighted some shocking and deeply unsettling truths about Bester's life and an inglorious romance that shook the law enforcement system, raising questions about security measures in private correctional homes. Hop on, because we're about to embark on a dirty, bloody ride, and I'll draw from whatever other info is available on this man, apart from what the documentary unveiled.
name, just that I have a first name.
Amazing.
But you live most of your life.
The sinister double life of Bester. Thabo Bester was known for having a certain kind of sinister charisma and intellect about himself, which helped him entice victims and arguably played a part in manipulating the authorities. It's the kind of charm that will make you doubt a person's motive deep down, but is too appealing to not give into. You know how those flamboyant F-boys have an aura about them, but somehow reason takes a backseat and you end up making horrible decisions? Well, Bester personified that. He was born in 1986 at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto, South Africa. But in 2023, we learnt from the Home Affairs Minister, Aaron Matsualedi, that Bester's birth could never be registered officially since his mother, Maria Mabaso, herself wasn't registered. The department also spilled intriguing details which will make you question whether some people truly have seeds of criminality sowed inherently. Matsualedi said that Thabo was first convicted when he was just 17 and was finally eligible to get an ID. He speculated something about Thabo's first brush with the law, which actually makes a lot of sense in hindsight. Probably Bester was working with criminals who are known to use young kids, particularly those whose fingerprints don't exist in the Home Affairs Office till the child turns 16. Our best bet is someone just whispered the idea into Bester's ears that unless he went near the Home Ministry, whatever he stole would not have his fingerprints. And bingo, Bester slipped into the abyss of illegality and over time mastered his game. He was put in jail for 2 years at the age of 19 for fraud, but oh boy, he was no ordinary thug. Thabo broke parole, continued his sexual assaults against women, and even committed a homicide, for which he pleaded guilty in the early 2000s and was sentenced to life imprisonment for 50 years. However, it's safe to assume that the rascal had a lot more criminal activities to his name beyond the most publicized offenses. Even as a prisoner, Bester was unstoppable. In 2018, he operated a faux media company as the chairman named Tom Metsepi, known as 21st Century Media, and presented it as a subsidiary of 21st Century Fox. God damn it, Fox, you really did have bad luck in the 2010s. Bester most likely smuggled a laptop in his cell for the calls, which was due to a security oversight by the British multinational private security company G4S. Ground Up, a South African news agency, provided pictures and video footage of the glamorous launch of Bester's fake company in 2018 at the Hilton Hotel, Sandton. The attendees, who included quite a few big names, were told that the chairperson would attend the event via video call since he was overseas. Unknown to them at that point, the convicted criminal appeared on screen wearing a suit and a designer watch. Businesswoman Pumudso Tenga was the proprietor of this sham of a studio, but has disclosed she was yet another victim of Bester who got pulled into his dealings, as Bester allegedly kept on sending her instructions through texts. The company caught the public eye when it falsely advertised Halle Berry and Taraji P. Henson as guest speakers on a show titled Woman in Media. The celebrities dubbed it as bullshit on Twitter, and the truth was soon revealed.
When I first heard of TK1,
the manipulation tactics that left everyone shocked. Bester managed to influence endless women and exploited them to serve his own needs, let alone the crimes he committed against them. This brings us to an extremely important question. How could Bester manipulate and get his way even with educated, self-established, and not to mention famed women like Nandifa Magudumana, which can be explained through some plausible theories, both societal and psychological? Firstly, the two sold their tricks under the alluring facade of upliftment. The two industries in which they reportedly hatched their scams were media and real estate, which have been traditionally perceived as white people sectors. So much so that the mainstream media in South Africa actually vilify black citizens as incompetent and amoral. Blame societal prejudices all you want, because even today, the black middle class aspires for luxury and excellence, qualities that unfortunately still seem distant. And that's exactly what the two evil-minded people cashed in on, attacking long-harbored intra-racial grievances against the whites who apparently have been too privileged throughout history. The people Bester and Magudumana targeted were the ones who did not really care about virtues anymore and wanted to climb the ladder of societal status, even at the cost of sin and corruption. Of meritocracy and equal opportunities are blindingly bright. The reality is highly disturbing. Wealth inequalities soar in South Africa, with resources being concentrated in the hands of a tiny elite group and a concerningly narrow scope for class mobility. It's no surprise how the cheater duo's gift of deception worked so well. We can't deny that a society with almost no social solidarity creates figures like Bester and Magudumana, who just preached the idiom that each person is for themselves. As harsh as it may sound, somewhere down the line, we are all responsible for such diabolical occurrences.
really. But we found that
A twisted love story turned nightmare. Coming to how Bester pulled Magudumana to his side, we have to delve into the effects of psychological conditioning and mental coercion. Despite her reputation as a successful cosmetic surgeon, Nandifa risked everything when she fell for a criminal. Nandifa met Bester back in 2006 when he ran a modeling and promotions agency where the now doctor was one of the agency's promo girls. Over the years, she lost contact with Bester, got married, and mothered 2 kids before she started visiting Bester in prison around 2016 to 2017. Nandifa then chose to leave her family life behind and got engaged to Bester, according to an affidavit in 2020, and claimed Bester proposed to her while he was in prison. One can argue that Nandifa was in a toxic relationship, like a lot of us have been, seeking validation and a shoulder for her emotional weakness. And tragically, she fell victim to the ever-persuasive Bester's trickery. Let's dig a little deeper here than just what was on the screen. Professor Seth Cooper of the Pan-African Psychology Union has offered a contrasting opinion. He claimed that both Thabo and Nandifa shared similar traits of deceitfulness and disregard for the law. They were also similar in terms of narcissism and lack of empathy, which was supported by Nandifa's reported stealing of dead bodies from the morgue and practicing medicine without renewing her license. These reflected deep-seated psychological issues of antisociality in Nandifa, hidden behind a mask of attractiveness and presumed delicateness. As they say, birds of the same feather always flock together, and rather than naively walk into a trap, Nanditha might have willingly accepted Bester's schemes, and their bond stood on a means of reinforcement to each other's sociopathic tendencies. Soon, their forbidden love story made headlines after Bester's alleged death in prison in 2022, the ensuing discovery of him being alive and living with Nanditha. The Department of Home Affairs database stated that Nanditha and Dr. Mukaseli Magadumana are still registered as a married couple. Nanditha is currently being held at the women's-only jail, Biza Makate Correctional Center in Kronstad, Free State, and is in the midst of some serious legal trouble. I know you can't choose who you fall for, but don't let caution completely slip your mind.
I know exactly what you're wearing. I know exactly where you are.
The crime that shook everyone who knew him. Bester was finally apprehended in 2011, and the Durban High Court convicted him for the rape of 2 women he picked up via Facebook. I apologize for the ghastly details I'm about to share now. The victims included a 25-year-old girl who did the blunder of responding to one of Bester's advertisements. She was taking a shower in their hotel room when the beast brought some duct tape and a knife from a nearby mall. He then tied her up and threatened her with a knife, initially intending to rob her. However, in his own words, he saw her legs and was sexually tempted, leading to her rape. The second girl was allegedly introduced to him by his girlfriend, and Bester had the same plan to loot her. Apparently, the complainant and Bester went to some place in Westville and soon started fancying and kissing each other, which led to sexual intercourse. In no time after this whimsical encounter, Bester held her at knife point, forced himself on her, and fled with her phone, credit cards, and watch. Then, in August 2012, Bester's life sentence was reinforced by the Western Cape High Court for the murder of his girlfriend, Nomfundo Taihulu, who was a 26-year-old Johannesburg saleswoman at the BMW dealership in Sandton. The unsuspecting lady was holidaying with her boyfriend at Cape Town, and then he slaughtered her. Little is known about what exactly happened from the court testimonies, most of which are Tabo's accounts and might very well be fabricated. When Bester first met Taihulu, he made her eyes glimmer with hope. Bester, in all possibility, didn't use his real name while telling Nomfundo that he was working on a television production and that she would be a good fit for the show. Of course, he conveniently chose to hide the fact that he was behind bars recently for fraud. The naive girl walked right into Bester's trap, and the two were apparently mutually exclusive. 8 months after their first meeting, in September, Bester decided to take Nomfundo to Cape Town for a photo shoot before the girl was due to start her new job. The couple once had a heated argument when Taihulu realized that Bester might still be in touch with his ex-girlfriend, but they soon sorted it out. Taihulu then woke up at 2 a.m. to find Bester pointing a knife at her and threatening her to hand over the phone and laptop. Though Nomfundo wrestled with the murderer with full might, she was soon stabbed in the chest and then had her hands tied with a t-shirt. Early the next morning, Bester left with Nomfundo's gadgets and told the guest house owners that she was still sleeping and should not be disturbed until 2 p.m. He basically took those 7 hours as a buffer to reach central Cape Town and board a flight to Durban. By the end of the day, the staff members grew suspicious, having not heard from Taihulu the whole day, and when they entered the room, all they found was a lifeless body. Soon he was wanted for rape, murder, assault, and robbery, and the KwaZulu-Natal police sector for psychologically motivated crimes tried to track him down. The public now knew him as a monster who used up to 13 identified aliases and had more than 100 phone numbers. The arrogant bastard even posted on his own Facebook page, "Catch me if you can. Why are people bothering me?" Finally, on October 6, 2011, the police arrested him. Bester had hijacked a car and crashed it, following which the investigating officer went to the Alberton area on the East Rand and brought him back to Durban. He was reportedly well-dressed, groomed, and well-spoken. The documentary does a pretty good job at depicting the messy rearrest. Audiences were shocked to see Bester's appearance in court and found it to be highly different, and it was nearly impossible to recognize him. However, the struggle of Nandifa's parents was too real and saddening. In fact, the documentary might even leave you conflicted about Nandifa's role in Bester's escape, which I'll get to in a little while.
Relationships turn sour. Everybody sort of clocked up.
The infamous escape and rearrest. On May 3rd, 2022, something happened that completely changed the course of Bester's life. He was declared dead at a fire that broke out in his cell at the maximum security private prison in Bloemfontein under the control of G4S. His body was found in a charred condition, which was unrecognizable. Nandifa Magudumana launched a court case and claimed to be his customary wife in the legal papers, owing to which the body was released to her. Moreover, she even hid the fact about her being already married to someone else. The Department of Correctional Services announced Bester's death to the public on the same day and cited the cause as suicide or self-termination. However, soon doubts cropped up. In October 2022, Ground Up published Mauricia Damons' article, which raised questions about the investigation into Bester's alleged demise. Again, in January 2023, Ground Up and Damons collaborated to reflect on the autopsy report, which showed that the body found in Bester's cell was dead long before the fire broke out, had a head injury with no signs of smoke inhalation, and most importantly, the corpse that was discovered was 1.4 meters, while Bester was thought to be at least 1.7 meters. The third article was a real blow to the face of prison security. This one, written by Damons and Daniel Stein, revealed evidence that Bester had faked his death to flee prison and soon published photographs of Bester and Magudumana with her children grocery shopping at a Woolworth store in Santon City. Soon there was a public outcry when the news broke, and victims shared their worry and feelings of betrayal over this. Finally, a week later, from March 17, 2023, when the story was printed, the Department of Correctional Services had to admit that Bester had indeed fooled us all and absconded from prison. Later, the police even confirmed that the scorched body belonged to Katleo Bereng Imfolo, who went missing in April 2022. The private security organization Fidelity even took to Facebook to offer a 100,000 Rand award to anyone who could provide any information regarding Bester's whereabouts. Soon the prison was taken over from G4S by the South African authorities, and the documentary threw light on the elaborate plotting that went behind Bester's breaking out. The two were then on the run and reached Mozambique before ending up in Tanzania. They even went on to open a property renovation company, Aram Properties, around Hyde Park, a wealthy suburb of Santon. Between September 2020 and March 2022, Bester pretended to be a random guy, TK Nkwan, and convinced many people to pay a deposit for a project that never existed in reality. They would be living in expensive hotels, always paying in cash, and never staying at one place for too long. The staff and witnesses called the couple secretive in demeanor. South African authorities subsequently took over management of the maximum security prison run from the hands of G4S. Understandable. The documentary revealed the intricate planning involved in the escape and serious questions about prison security and oversight at privately managed correctional facilities. Bester and Magudumana were finally caught in April 2023 in Arusha by the Tanzanian police and were deported to South Africa. The last episode of the documentary focused on the police chase and the arrest of the couple.
I heard you. Nandita, I will burn you with that fucking house in Hyde Park.
How he eluded justice for so long. There's a question that gave many people countless sleepless nights. Turns out the answers were pretty much on our face. Firstly, the government realized soon enough that there was foul play in Bester's death. 6 days after his alleged demise, the inspecting judge for correctional services, Justice Edwin Cameron, wrote a blasphemous letter to Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola. The correspondence claimed that there were indications that some G4S employees and others staged a fire in the single cell of Bester, who was transferred there upon applying, and a different corpse was smuggled into the cell with the aim of faking the inmate's death to help him get away. Soon, JICS started to pull out their detective hats, and a nasty legal spat occurred between Magadumana and the SAPS authorities who confiscated the body. Soon, DNA testing with his mother did not match and gave away the truth, and the police learned that Bester did not die after all. Further, an inmate wrote to the Free State High Court mentioning an official who was later identified as a former G4S warden, Sanoha Matsuara. All of this was going on before Ground Up got tips to investigate Bester's reported death. In April 2023, it was disclosed that the anonymous tip was from none other than Edwin Cameron. At least someone had the guts to do the right thing. Funnily enough, Senzo Michunu, Minister of Police, stated that Bester was arrested for speeding in July 2022, 2 months after he fled, and he showed a fake ID. He was then released because neither the wider police systems nor common men knew he had escaped. Multiple members from the private security firm have been allegedly working with Bester, and even the company G4S had to appear before parliamentary committees. Many big names, including high-ranking politicians, have allegedly been involved in the infamous planning by Bester and Magadumana. From several interviews, and now the docu-series, it seems like he had at least 4 fake passports and led a lavish life in prison. There are also records of him sending official e-wallets, buying vehicles in cash, and purchasing property, which makes it clear that officials within the prison have definitely been accomplices to his crimes. The documentary also suggests some involvement of organized crime syndicates in Bester's prison break. It's not only shocking to see such bribery and malpractice in custodial safeguards, but also rather scary. To conclude how Bester eluded justice for so long, it was a mix of dishonesty, abuse of power, and the lackadaisical attitude of the government. Probably the attempt to avoid public humiliation of the penal systems also contributed to the delayed rearrest. I can't help but wonder, had Ground Up not delivered their duties as a diligent journalism organization, would the police ever have attempted to track down Bester? Moreover, what all could it have done to cover up the incident and never let the people know how fraudulent bureaucratic functionings are?
The South African Police Service has confirmed the suicide of rapist and...
The shocking revelations from Thabo Bester's mother. The revelations from Bester's mother, Maria Mabaso, are both astonishing and horribly painful. Apart from what she said in the documentary, we can know a lot more about Maria from previous interviews. She had a difficult life from the beginning, since her mother worked very hard on farms. Maria often stayed with her, but eventually ended up staying by herself, having been pushed by her mother too many times. However, when her mother got sick, Maria took care of her before she passed away. She recalled that Thabo was always a problem child and stated she had to sign for his release in a case in Randburg. Thabo never knew his father. Maria was raped while traveling one day, which led to her conceiving Thabo, and though she wanted to give him up, she just couldn't. Maria said, "He was my child, and I chose to raise him." When she saw Thabo being convicted on TV, the poor woman was devastated and even suffered a stroke. She sent her daughter to visit him in prison because Maria could not bring herself to meet her heinous offender of a son. Following Thabo's imprisonment, Maria feared for her own safety. People began calling her and warning her about people who might come posing as policemen. At times, journalists would follow her, and the woman was afraid to even go to the shops. Adding to her misery, Maria learned about Thabo's death in prison, and she could not eat or sleep for a week. She had to manage all the mortuary records on her own, and ever since she found out that it was all a hoax, Maria has lived in constant fear. Maria stated that whenever she gets to meet her son, she would want to ask him, "Why did you do this? Why didn't you think about us? Your actions are killing me." Maria was scared that if Bester was not arrested again, he might be killed off. She said all she wanted was peace, and in a bittersweet moment mentioned that she never abandoned him for how he was born, but now the weight seems too heavy to carry.
Bester is believed to be linked to about 20 cases of rape and robbery.
The trial that unmasked the monster. A massive courtroom drama ensued after Bester was first convicted. In order to get a reduced sentence, the cold and calculative Bester claimed that his circumstances made him what he is. Bester even stated that he never met his biological mother and had to live a life of poverty with his alcoholic grandmother. Apparently, he took to criminal activities to support himself and was just watching out for himself. Bester also spilled that he was sexually violated by one of his grandmother's friends. We'll never know how much of this is true, but the fact that this was all made up reveals him to be an impossibly cunning person. To gain more sympathy, he shared his horrible experiences in prison when he was allegedly gang raped with a bottle being inserted into his anus. The evidence of abuse he showed to the court had no mention of rape per se. That's not all. Bester went on crying about a pathetic backstory where he had to live with his friends in a squatter camp after his grandma passed away, where he was molested again by a man. I know I have done terrible things. This is not truly who I am. I want the opportunity to make things right, were his own words. However, Magistrate Sharon Marks sentenced him to 25 years of imprisonment for the 2 rapes before being convicted as a lifer in 2012 after he pleaded guilty to Taihulu's murder. Bester took to the court stand to say, "I am fully responsible for what I have done. I did not fully understand what I was doing in Cape Town. I am sorry for what happened." Though it did not sway the court's judgment, Bester managed to avoid a full trial, and the stories of the victims remained unheard until the docuseries directed by Anthony Molyneux was released. In the documentary, Bester himself revealed in a chilling comment that he can't separate reality from fantasy, which creates several unanswered questions about his mental state.
Convinced by someone like Thabo Bester, like how smooth was he?
Bester is a criminal mastermind. The documentary highlighted one of the most frightening parts about the most elaborate jailbreak in the history of South Africa. Bester would be controlling prison staff in an unbelievably powerful manner, plotting his escape for months. He manipulated guards, bribed officials, and got a renowned cosmetic surgeon to be complicit in his activities. He managed to get help from both the inside and the outside, making sure that the alarm and even CCTV were mysteriously turned off on the night of the fire. Honestly, my jaw dropped when I realized that this criminal mastermind had people working for him to lure a homeless man into the prison, kill him, and incinerate him to fake his own death. The level of planning and coordination required is staggering, and it quickly reinstated the speculation that Bester didn't act alone. There is no doubt that Bester was a great puppeteer. Even prison guards would warn others to not talk to him, claiming he can hook anyone.
What are the results going to be?
Can I be honest with you?
Yes.
The results are instant.
Nandifa Magadumana's part in Bester's escape is still shrouded in mystery. Nandifa was someone you'd expect to see on magazine covers. She had a perfect life as a successful doctor and influencer with endless followers. This role model-ish person's contribution to Thabo Bester's breakout can be seen as a combination of manipulation and intimidation, or an intentional action on her part. Probably she got swept up in Bester's charm and love bombing and believed that he was innocent. Her colleagues and friends observed that by 2022, she was no longer herself anymore. Her glamorous, confident lifestyle suddenly turned into paranoia and secrecy. Nandifa became increasingly isolated, always getting stared at by new faces around her and hired bodyguards. Her parents felt she was getting distant from her job and getting entangled in some dubious business. The series documents her frantic behavior in the run-up and in the aftermath of the breakout. Nandifa was taking desperate phone calls, making urgent court applications to claim Bester's body, and withdrawing from friends and family. Her world collapsed in no time, and her company and reputation were all destroyed. She's been described as someone shattered with guilt and fear. showing clear signs of psychological distress. The voicemails and the early psych evaluations illustrate their terrifying dynamic. Bester wanted total control over her, shutting her up with threats of violence and exploiting her for power, money, and influence. However, we can't really shrug off the feeling that the woman allowed whatever happened to her. Surprisingly, her father, Zolila Sekeleni, also got drawn into this mess. He was arrested early in 2023 for involvement in smuggling the body, but he got out on bail. Zolila is now awaiting trial, but in the show, he expressed his dislike over Nandifa's involvement with this man named TK Nakwana and denied any link to the crimes. Her destiny remains uncertain, while the public has to deal with the question as to how a celebrated doctor got caught up in such a meticulously planned criminal enterprise.
At least I know you try to help me.
Marvelous verdict. Phew, that was one crazy ride. The documentary doesn't shy away from delving into the gory details of Tabo's crimes and his complex relationship with Dr. Nandifa. Filled with interviews from journalists, family members, and friends of the accused, it will run shivers down anyone's spine, especially in the sequences when Tabo himself is questioned. However, it does lack in organizing the events chronologically and might come off a bit chaotic, which is why I tried to pull in more input from here and there. So get yourself a nice big mug of coffee before you sit down to watch this, because you really need to be attentive. Trust me, it pays off in the end. I'm not saying that you'll get all the answers by the final episode, but the attempt to exhibit one of South Africa's most gruesome stories is commendable. Let us know if you have any new information about the case in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.